Hi, it's John from Android Addicts, and today we're going to be looking at the PowerA Moga XP5-A. So the reason I've got XP5-X in the title of the video is because this is basically the exact same controller. There's one difference which we'll come to later, but basically the XP5-X is the Xbox edition of this controller. So the sort of highlights here are green and the button colours and the home button are slightly different. So after noticing that the XP5-X is not available until September the 15th, I found the XP5-A here, which is, like I say, it's basically the same controller. So when the XP5-X releases on the 15th, it will come with a 40% off Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold, and that will be the main difference really between this and the XP5-X. So if you already have Gold and Game Pass, if you can find this one cheaper, quite possible, then I would go for this one. So on the side of the box we just have some artwork. On the back of the box we have a bit more detail as to what's inside. So this controller, being $79.99, is on the expensive side, like the Kishi and like the GLAP controller, but the main difference this one has is that it comes with an integrated power bank. So it's got a 3000 milliamp hour power bank built into the controller. So that's quite a nice little feature, which would be nice to test out. And it's one of the controllers which has a clip, which allows you to just clip your phone in place. So it would be nice to see whether the S20 Ultra fits inside the clip. So here are some specifications on the side. So without further ado, let's get into it and see what it looks like. Okay, so presentation wise, not as nice as the GLAP that we looked at last time, but we'll see what it's like inside. So here's the main controller, and here we have the adjustable clip, which we'll look at in more detail later. Here are our cables, which we'll have a look at shortly, and here is our controller manual. Okay, before we get into those cables, I just want to have a quick look at the controller itself, see how it feels, and just compare it to the Kishi and maybe even the GLAP, and obviously the Xbox One controller itself. So as you can see, the layout is perfectly aligned to the Xbox One controller, which I have here. So it's the exact same layout, which is great. That's the layout I actually prefer, and all the buttons are in the right places, and it looks yeah, it looks pretty good. So let's just have a feel. So the analog sticks feel fantastic, really probably exactly the same as the Xbox One controller. The D-pad feels pretty good actually. It's not as clicky as the Xbox One controller, but I actually prefer this to the Kishi D-pad, which was slightly spongier. I'd say this is on par with the GLAP D-pad, which I did quite like. So yeah, definitely a plus for the D-pad on the Moga here. Now the analog sticks, like I said, they feel great. They feel very Xbox-like, I should say. And yeah, I think you're going to be able to get some good accuracy with these. So the face buttons, A, B, X and Y, they feel, I'd say these feel slightly more like the GLAP buttons. So they feel good. And compared to the Kishi, they feel a bit better, to be honest, a bit more responsive. They feel better when you actually press them down, slightly less spongy than the Kishi. Now the other buttons we have here are the start and select. I'm not a huge fan of their position, to be honest. I would have preferred them down here like on the Xbox One controller, but they're there and they would do the job. Obviously you don't use the start and select buttons very frequently, so that's not a major problem. Now also on the front here we have a little switch here, as you can see, USB or Bluetooth. So this can actually be used either as a wired controller for well, in Android and in Windows as well if you wanted to, or you can have it as a wireless controller, again, both Android and Windows. So that little switch lets you select that. Here's our little menu button, as they have called it here. Now that will turn on the device. That is basically your Xbox home button here. And also at the bottom we have two additional buttons. This one here checks the current state of the power bank, so how charged up is your controller. And the one on the right here turns on or off the power bank function. So if you see when it's on, there's a little green sort of indicator there, so you know that's on, and you can turn it off again to switch it off. So the bumper buttons and the triggers, again, as you can see, they're very similar to the Xbox One. In fact, pretty, well, almost identical. So yeah, the spacing and the feel is very similar indeed. I actually quite like the Moga buttons, bumper buttons, more than the Xbox One buttons, because these, certainly when you first get the controller, are actually quite hard to press initially. So these are a bit softer to press, but they still have a little clicky feel to them. And the triggers feel good, and there's enough sort of play in them to get a good feeling with them. Now the additional buttons on the back here, as we can see, these are programmable buttons, AGL and AGR. So what you can do is use this nice orange button here to press and hold, press the function, say, I don't know, left trigger, and then you'll press whichever button you want next to map it to the underside of your controller. So this little cut out groove sort of thing at the bottom, that's for the clip, which we'll be looking at shortly. And as you can see on the top, like I said before, this is for the USB power bank function, or for connecting to your PC. Here we have the charging port to charge up the controller itself, and here we have the Bluetooth sync button. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the clip here. So this actually clips onto your controller, and then you can stick your phone in it. So it's actually quite stiff to start with, so I would be very careful and bend, get your hands as close to the hinge as you can and bend it upwards slowly and gently as you can. Don't do it from up here or from down here, because you could break the plastic. So hold it as close to the hinge, like I say, as you can, and bend it upwards. So the other part of this is a nice little function here, is that you can use it as a stand, which I will explain a bit more later. And this is actually one function that the XP5-X does not have with its clip. And we'll go through that a bit later, but I'm actually quite surprised that it doesn't come with that. So to stick this on the Moga, what we need to do is just start at the top and press it down on here and bring the bottom bit round to line up with the gap in the controller there, and then just push this forwards until you hear a click. And there we have it, our controller is set up here, and we can now put our phone in. To remove this, you simply pull from the bottom here, just pull out and backwards, and that removes the clip. Okay, so the question is, can this hold a Galaxy S20 Ultra? Now, I've got my S20 Ultra here, still in its Samsung protective standing cover, so if it can fit this in, then it can fit pretty much any phone in whatsoever. So I'm just going to push the phone in like this, and it can just about squeeze in, which is quite a feat really, considering how wide this phone is, especially with the case on. Now, whether I'd recommend using it with a case on like this, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously not flush against the back here, so I would probably take my case off anyway, just to be sure, but it doesn't feel like it's going to come out. No, it's not. It just doesn't look flush to the back of the grip. So let's try it again, and this time without the case on. And it feels better putting it in, and as you can see, it's now flush against the sort of foam pad at the back there. So like I said, this comes with a little clip that comes out here, and it allows you to stand your controller up like this without worrying about your phone, you know, toppling over or anything else happening. So if it was like this, for example, it's going to go back and there's nothing to hold it, so you'd have to sort of put your controller down like that, and it's not very nice. Okay, so I've paired the controller via Bluetooth now, and we're just going to go into the Gamepad Tester App and just have a quick go through the buttons and the analog sticks and just see how this actually fares in comparison to any other controller we've done, such as the Kishi previously. So first I'll just test the buttons are all working fine, which they certainly appear to be. As you can see, there's pretty much no lag when my thumb goes down and the button gets put on. And again, we've got the bottom buttons here working well. So everything seems to be functioning there, which is great. So let's go and test the actual axis of the controller. So I'll just hold it a bit closer so you can see, but it does feel really nice, and we can get a good range of movement by the look of it. Now I'm not going to go into quite as much detail as I did on the Kishi, but here we can see that I'm able to, fill in this circle here without too much issue at all. There doesn't seem to be any dead zones or dead spots with this, which is good. I haven't actually come across a controller that does have dead zones in it, but there could always be a first. But yeah, as you can see, the left control analog stick is working fine. Okay, so we'll just try the right stick now. Again, it feels very smooth. It doesn't feel quite as light as the iPega controller that I reviewed, but it does feel, very soft and smooth, which is quite nice. Like I say, it's like an Xbox One X or Xbox One S controller. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the cables that come with the controller here. We've got a 2-meter USB-A to micro USB. So this will go into the back of your controller, and you can then plug the other end into either your PC to use it as a USB controller there, or you can plug it into a charger and it will charge the power bank. Now what we could also do is plug the USB-A cable into the top here, and then plug the USB-C cable into the side of the phone here. And if I wanted to, I could turn on the power bank, and you can now see the phone is charging. So I'm going to turn that back off. What you can also do, if your phone doesn't have USB-C, is just pop off the end and you have a micro USB connector for slightly older phones maybe, or phones that haven't quite moved up to USB-C yet. So that's a good little feature there. Now the last cable here is a micro USB to USB-C or micro USB cable, and this basically lets you have a USB controller for your Android phone. So the micro USB into the bottom here, plug that into your phone, and then you've now got a USB controller. So just to test out the USB controller, we're going to switch over to USB here. Just go back into Gamepad Tester and just test the axis, and yeah, it's all working absolutely fine. So it's up to you really. You can have a Bluetooth controller or you can have USB-C. Obviously there'll be slightly less lag with a USB-C controller, so that's probably more for your hardcore gamers. So if your controller ever did run out of battery, for example, you could just switch over to USB and then you don't have to worry about running out of juice. Okay, whilst Fortnite is loading, this controller clip does allow you to obviously adjust the angle of your phone, so you can actually, have it fully upright if you like, or have it slightly more leaned back, depending on your position and where you're sitting, obviously. Now, like I said, the clip's very handy because I found just, holding this, certainly with a big heavy phone like this, for a while, it does actually start to ache a bit. So I've been actually sort of resting this little section here of the clip on my knee, and it just takes some of the weight off your wrists while you're holding a heavy phone. Okay, so as you can see, I'm not a Fortnite expert by any means, but I've managed to kill quite a few people with relative ease. It feels, it feels absolutely fine. You don't ever think that you're using a sort of Android controller or anything. It does feel like an Xbox controller. So yeah, really a good 10 out of 10 for this controller so far. So like I said, with the clip here, if I was a bit tired, I just wanted to put my phone down, I can just do that easily without any problems. If I want to charge my phone up now, I can plug in the USB-A connector here and then plug that into my phone and it will start charging. If I turn on the power bank here, that's now charging up. So what are we at? We're at 73% at the moment. Now, this certainly isn't fast charging, so it'll be interesting to know whether we just get, a standard, this is going to be, a 1 amp charge, or whether we get something else. Like I said, I'm really not a Fortnite expert at all, but I've somehow managed to survive with 1 health against 2 people. Sorry, 7 health. And I probably could have, been slightly more accurate with my finger, but for what I'm showing at the moment, you can see it's working pretty well. Okay, so I did finally die in the end, but let's just check. So the battery percentage has gone up by 1% since I plugged it in, so that's great. It means that it will charge the phone up whilst you are playing. I was worried it may not have enough power to do that, but it is actually doing that, so that's great. So you've basically got an extra 3000 milliamp hours for your gaming session. So this is Batman Arkham Knight, and it's running on the Xbox Game Pass. As you can see, it looks absolutely fantastic, and this is basically what they're making the XP5-X for. It's the sort of Xbox version at the launch of the Xbox Game Pass service, which I've done a video on, but I'll put a link in the description and in the top right. But yeah, it's a fantastic service, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what other games come out on it. Okay, I'm just going to play a bit of Gears 5 and we'll see how that performs. Okay, so as you can see, this works really well and I've had no issues at all with the controller. And yeah, so I think it's about time we do our final sort of wrap up and see what we think. I'll just show you how you program the trigger buttons here, or at least the sort of underneath buttons. If you press and hold the orange button here, you see that the light starts flashing, so you can then press a button and then you can press whichever one you want to map it to. So if we go into the Gamepad Tester, we didn't do it in time, so again, press and hold, press the button and then press the corresponding button underneath. That should now be my A button, and to clear it, press and hold and then press on the underneath button. So I'm going to put it back onto my trigger just for fun. So I now have triggers underneath it as well. Okay, so I guess the main question is whether you should get the Moga controller or the Kishi controller, which are what Microsoft are sort of pushing for the Xbox Game Pass. So the Kishi one, which I've reviewed in a previous video, which I've put a link to the description, which is this one here, $79.99, or the Moga for $69.99. So the pros and cons of the Moga, I mean, obviously the main one being you can charge your phone with the built-in power bank. It's a different layout compared to the Kishi. So we see here the sort of analog sticks and buttons and D-pad are all in the right place if you're used to an Xbox controller. Here they're in a good place, not quite the same, but they are in a good place nonetheless. Obviously the other feature being that we can use this either wirelessly or with USB connectivity. So games such as COD Mobile work out of the box with this, whereas we need COD Mobile for the Kishi to be run with the Panda Gamepad app. Now again, the other feature which you may or may not like is that the weight of this controller, even without a phone in it, is actually quite, you know, reasonably heavy. Not massively heavy, but you can certainly tell it's got a battery inside it. Now when you pair that with a huge phone such as the Galaxy S20 here, it does make gaming slightly more difficult when compared to the Kishi, which when you're holding it further apart, so the weight is sort of spread more easily on your wrists, and it's not sort of, you know, make you bend your wrists forward. With a heavy phone, you're holding the whole thing in place, and I suppose it's mainly the bottom of your arms that would hurt more. So yeah, there's pros and cons for both controllers, and I guess the choice to which one you go for is obviously down to you at the end of the day. So check out my other video for the Kishi. If you haven't already, that might help give you a better sort of idea as to which one you might want to go for. £10 more expensive, £10 cheaper, maybe slightly more versatile with this one. Really depends, I suppose, on your preferred method or style of gaming. The other thing to note just quickly with this controller is that if your power button is somewhere, you know, further down the phone, like it is on the S20 Ultra here, it could potentially get touched by the holder here. Now, not every game supports the other orientation, The streaming service does, but I know COD Mobile only works when my phone is this way up. So if my power button was in a slightly different position, it would actually affect the sort of position I could place my phone. Now I could, in theory, place it so the power button is in between, but I think it's just about central with it like this and without the power button being touched. Other than that though, I really like the Moga, and yeah, I'm really impressed with it. It's certainly one of my favorites because of the being able to hold it like this. You know, you're really there in the action with the game that you're playing, and it's the best of both worlds with the USB input and the Bluetooth input. You know, you can't really go wrong. So yeah, that's highly recommended. Like I say, there is a affiliate link in the description below if you want to pick one up. If you do find it cheaper than the Xbox edition version, then you might as well go for this one because it is exactly the same except for this nice little kick out stand here for you to rest your controller whilst you're not using it. Like I said, I've also found that when I'm holding this, I can rest this on my sort of leg just to help, you know, take some of the weight off my huge phone here, which is already heavy enough as it is. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click the like button. Let me know down below in the comment section which of these you're going to go for. Would you be happy with the XP5-A, or are you going to wait for the XP5-X, which we have here, which is the Xbox branded version? Now the clip you can see here is slightly different to the XP5-A here, as it has a dual sort of hinge system, but it does not include this nice little kickstand. I personally would rather have the kickstand, like I said, for taking a bit of weight off it if I rest it on my knee when I'm playing, rather than just being able to, you know, move the phone slightly closer to you. Obviously that does help the controller balance when you have a phone in there, which is probably why it's not falling over in this picture here. But other than that, they are exactly the same controller. So I've put a couple of links down below if you want to pick up either the XP5-A or if you want to go for the Xbox branded one, the XP5-X. So let me know down below which one you're going to pick up, and click the subscribe button to see more videos in the future, and I will see you in the next one.